Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. In our fast-paced world, we see sleep as wasted time, or else we lie awake as anxiety, fear, or distractions run through our minds. That was never God's intent for the night. Without realizing it, we've handed the sacred time over to the enemy. With warmth, compassion, and keen biblical insight, Faith Blatchford reveals that it's during this precious time that God imparts everything necessary for us to be equipped for the day. Without peaceful sleep at night, we're robbed mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually of the resources we need. God created the night and the dark, and He called it good. He dwells in it. The dark does not belong to the devil, so don't let the enemy steal it from you. Here are the tools you need to take back your night to encounter the God of rest and sleep peacefully the whole night through. Faith Blatchford is the author of Winning the Battle for the Night, God's Plan for Sleep, Dream, and Revelations. She's the founder and president of Age to Come, a nonprofit organization. She's an ordained minister, graduate of Vassar College with a BA in religion. She's an author as well as a producer of instrumental soaking CDs. She hosts the Sleep Project, Better Nights for Better Days, right here on the last Monday of every month at the 12 o'clock hour. For more information, visit her at thesleepproject.org. We want to welcome in Faith Blatchford to her edition of The Sleep Project, Better Days for Better Nights. Faith, welcome into your segment of Revealing the Truth, focused on sleep.
Thank you so much. It's always good to be with you and all of your viewers. What a wonderful blessing technology is. I mean, we live in a very remarkable, blessed time when you think that we can be touching people worldwide, sitting in our office or studio or home or wherever.
It's amazing. We picked up 477,000 viewers in Algeria, Pakistan, Israel, and India in the last 30 days.
Oh my goodness.
So it's just been a phenomenal experience to bring the Word of God to the uttermost corners of the earth, and India is actually getting ready to pass America as our number one viewing audience, and with only 2% of India being Christian. It's amazing that a Christian broadcast is getting that kind of attention because they're seeking answers. They're seeking answers that they can't find in Shiva. They're seeking answers that they're just not getting in the multiplicity of Hinduism. And there are, of course, so much poverty and so many things impacting them that when you talk about sleep, you're talking about people sleeping in streets and sleeping on the banks of the Ganges River and in huts and yet the internet gets to them, and they gather around whatever devices and they watch and they learn and they respond, and they're so thankful for the teaching, because this is different than the missionary who's there setting up the churches and setting up the orphanages and setting up the food ministries. They're getting discipled, but discipleship is different than what we do.
Right.
And although if you were to take a look at the broad spectrum of discipleship, all of the areas we cover would fall under that, but discipleship is usually about equipping somebody to go out and preach the gospel, following in the ways and the footsteps of Jesus. But when we take the areas of impact that we have to contend with as believers to live out our faith, the pulpits aren't going to talk about it. The discipleship programs aren't going to cover it. And even many of the books that are out there are not going to be flying off the shelf, because until somebody points out to you that this is a huge area of impact, you really don't think about it. Until I met you, I didn't think about sleep as being a key factor in my relationship with God. And that 1/3 of our lives, if we have that normal 7 to 8 hour period of sleep, is available to God for His purpose and for His use. And when you frame it that way, it's not something that is wasted. It's not something that should be embraced in any other way other than another avenue for God to meet you, heal you, restore you, refresh you, answer you, impart to you. It's an area that's really kind of pushed off to the side and not really addressed. So we thank you and we appreciate the fact that you focus on this key area. You shared with me what has been one of my great concerns, and that is the mental health impact of COVID-19 and anxiety, separation, the social distancing, which has created this environment of, it should have never been called social distancing, it should have been called physical distancing. Right. Just 6 feet, not shutter in your home, not avoid all human contact. And there's a lot of people that are really struggling. You have statistics from April to June. I have statistics from yesterday about opioid increase due to COVID-19, opioid deaths due to COVID-19. And it's a whole segment of how people are dealing with the stress, anxiety, and fear that has just attached itself to this whole response mechanism of this unseen enemy that is pandemic. It's across the world. It is unavoidable. But you've taken it and you've kind of framed it where we can take some authority over it using this tool that God has given us, sleep.
Right.
So kind of take us down this path of anxiety and depression disorders and its interconnection with sleep disruption, its interconnection with increase in night terrors, insomnia. People's clocks are being reset because their days are not filled with the work they used to do. And the remote worker now has the freedom and flexibility to work whatever hours as long as they're producing whatever they're producing. And a lot of them are finding that that's impacted their sleep patterns. And along with that is their mood disorders.
One thing, sleep is universal. You were talking about viewership in India and Pakistan, the Sudan, various places that are not just the U.S. Everybody sleeps. And the thing about this pandemic is it's really touching every nation, I believe. I haven't done studies to see, what are the cases of coronavirus in Pakistan or India, but it's a virus, it's contagious, it's everywhere. And so that means it's going to have the same impact, I think, on people, not just physically. We know what the physical impacts are, but the mental and emotional impacts. And that's, these are statistics from the CDC in the US but 40% of the population is exhibiting or testifying to mental issues or substance abuse as a result of COVID. 40% of the population. I mean, sometimes we hear statistics and we think 40%. 40%, that's almost half of the population. If you have a population of whatever the current population is in the United States, 350 million, that's 125 million people. That's mind-boggling. And so when you take that number and you realize that mental problems of anxiety, depression, trauma, that impacts sleep. And so then we see more statistics that one study, UCLA Sleep Center, 20 or 30% more sleep problems being reported by patients. So that we're talking about millions of people. We're not just talking about, a few here or a few there. This is, as the pandemic is touching millions of people, so is the result of that in lack of sleep, which then impacts our health. It impacts our mental health. It's like a catch-22. If I have anxiety, I don't sleep. Then if I don't sleep, I have more anxiety because I haven't slept. I mean, it's like one feeds on the other. And so it has become a pandemic in some ways of insomnia. Now they've named it. It's now not just insomnia, it's coronasomnia. I mean, that is, the new word in the medical dictionary, and probably it'll make its way into the Merriam-Webster dictionary, coronasomnia. And so we have to pay attention to that because it not only affects our body and our emotions and our minds, but also our spiritual life, our life with God, because those 8 hours are supposed to be time connecting with God. That's his time, because all the other interruptions, noise, responsibilities are during daylight. And so at night it's supposed to be deep, sweet sleep and God interacting through dreams, through visions, through downloads of songs and revelation and wisdom and equipping for the day. And so when we don't get that sleep, our body suffers, our mind, our emotions, but also our spirit. And so God's interaction with us is the most important interaction. So that's why this is so critical that we figure out how to take back our nights, even in the midst of a pandemic. And so, we know a lot of the, and I've talked about it, it's in the book, Winning the Battle for the Night, some of the practical steps that we need to still focus on, even though everything is disrupted. We can't just, it's like all the, there are a lot of memes on social media of, like, one that's very funny is the painting of the Mona Lisa, this beautiful painting of this beautiful woman, and then it shows an after COVID, and she's put on, like 100 pounds and her hair is gray. I mean, it's like, it's funny, but it's not, because so many people are just, it's like you can't go to the gym, you can't do your normal routine, you can't, you're eating out of frustration and boredom, and your kids are eating things, you give them things you wouldn't give them just to get them out of your space so you can do your work. And it's we've got to recapture the things that we knew to do before COVID. That's the start. That's where we have to start. Let's review that. What do we need to do to get a good night's sleep?
If you take a look at this, in the United States, homeschooling has become a new model. Many states have adopted it, but now because of COVID and because of school closings, parents are now interacting with their children in a much different way. So children are being affected by the same anxieties and the same. So now it's the age in which we used to focus on was middle age or college age and above. This is now boiling down and going all the way down to the 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-olds, and is having a universal impact. And we're seeing families struggle for balance, new defined roles, challenges that add to that worry of, am I getting my child the right education? Am I making the right choices? And then you're taking that, and those are the thoughts that are spinning in your head as you're supposed to be entering into this prayerful sanctuary, and it's hard to shut that mind off. So it boils down to, or drills into, the family, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, spousal abuse, and then we're seeing conflict in the home. Tired people fight more than well-rested people. I don't need to do a UCLA study to tell you that people who are hungry, people who are tired, argue more. We're just not in a good frame of mind. So this is all contributing to, if I can affect one area, just one area, I can't stop the pandemic. I can't change the state laws for masking or for school closure. I can't control any of those things, but I can control my thought life and how I create my sanctuary as to where I'm going to find my solace and my time with the Lord. I may be too busy during the day with the busyness. My prayer time may be compromised, my Bible reading time, Bible study time, but I still have to go to bed. And if I can frame that in a way in which I invite the Lord into that narrative, then I'm still maintaining and growing in my relationship with the Lord.
And two areas that we can focus on that are probably easier to maintain than some of the others that have to do with schedule and even what we're eating. I mean, that's just kind of, people's diets have gone out the window as well. But there are two things that we can focus on. One is sunlight and getting out in the sun, because that affects us mentally, emotionally, and physically. I mean, we're wired for sunlight, and now medical science is recommending D3, the vitamin D3. Well, you get that when you go outside and you sit in the sun for a while, not baking your skin, not, worrying about getting skin cancer, but an amount of time, 20 minutes out in the sun, your body absorbs the sun and it converts into D3, which impacts your immune system, which impacts the inflammation, which impacts your mental as well as physical well-being. And so doctors are prescribing that, and as a something that's to protect us in a way from COVID. Go get out in the sun. And the other is this idea of music. We're wired for music. And so taking time at night to listen, to wind down, allow your kids to be exposed to the same thing of peaceful music that is 40 or 50 beats per minute, lower than the human heart rate, which can diffuse and lower the amped up aspect of our physical body, our minds, our emotions, to just allow that blanket to just calm everything down. It doesn't resolve, our financial issues, our spouse, conflicts, but it can do something internally in us. So in the daytime, get some sun. At night, get some music. Those are things that we've talked about before, but sometimes we just need to focus on one or two things. And rather than our, long to-do list, redo the bedroom so it's cold and quiet and dark, and redo what I'm eating, and, we can't do everything right now. We can get outside, get some sun, find some peaceful music to wind down. And those two things, as far as what we've talked about before, I really think will help in this issue that we're having a struggle to sleep in the midst of this crisis.
Back when we first started talking about this, we talked about creating an environment which promotes good sleep. No television in the bedroom. A cool, dark, peaceful place. A place where couples make a decision that if they have to have a conversation, it's outside of the bedroom. There's some basics that when we have COVID and we have all these other things that distract us, we forget some of the blocking and tackling, the throwing and catching, the hitting, the basics, and we need to restore that. That's something that should not be externally changed based on other factors. We have control over our bedrooms.
Right.
You may not have control over anything else. You have control over your bed.
Right.
The pillow you sleep on, you have control over that. The light in the room, you have control over that. There are certain things that we've kind of relinquished control over everything because of this COVID, and we're just waiting for the next, code red, code blue, code green, whatever it is. This is shut down. You got to wear a mask. You don't have to wear a mask. But there are things we should be doing consistently, which you bring out in winning the battle for the night. Maybe it's time we reviewed those again to say that, you are overwhelmed. All of you. You're overwhelmed. Every news report, COVID, there's a bulletin, how many people got it, how many people died, how many people. It's constant bombardment of information that gives a sense of hopelessness, an insecurity in the unknown, but yet there are, normal activities, sleep being one of them, that we can have control over, which will bring a whole new perspective, a whole new attitude, and a whole new healthy structure. I walk 6 miles a day outdoors with my dog. My daughter said to me the other day, "Dad, you're so tan, and I know you don't go out, you don't lay out in the sun." And I said, "Well, I walk my dog, 3 times 2 miles each, 30 minutes each, every day." And she said, "Well, you look refreshed." I said, "Well, the exercise helps me sleep better. It helps my dog sleep better. There's things we can do. And we don't have to have this victim mentality, because we already know that we're overcomers by the word of our testimony, the blood of the Lamb. This is temporary. Now, the president says we have to live with this. Okay, we live with a lot of things. We live with cancer. We live with heart disease. We live with diabetes. We live with automobile accidents. We live with those kind of things. We haven't eliminated those from our society.
Right.
So how can we maintain, and what kind of things can we do specifically, with people's changes in schedule, because they have the freedom. They've changed a lot of habits. A cup of coffee at night, a stimulant, something that they don't think is impacting them, but unless they have kind of the pilot mentality that says that I'm going to go through this checklist every time, my pre-flight checklist, every single time before I get behind the yoke of that plane, we should be doing the same thing. And then it should become automatic that we check for those things. What are some of the things we need to focus on?
Well, I have another thing I'd like us to add to our list of things that will help us get more sleep, better quality, better quantity, and I'm calling it the awe effect, AWE.
Okay.
And that may seem like something, well, what does that have to do with sleep? And I love science, I love research, and I love people who kind of get outside of the box of the normal things that people usually do research on. I mean, there's been a lot of research done over the years, probably the decades, about negative emotions. I mean, the effect of anger, the effect of fear, depression, disconnection, all those negative things. We have tons of studies that have been done, millions of dollars that have been directed towards these studies, and it's all been helpful to show how those negative emotions negatively affect our mind, our emotions, our body. Well, I think it was 2013, a couple of professors at UC Berkeley decided they were going to start doing research on positive emotions. And they did a huge study, and there really wasn't much response, because I think bad news sells. And so, studies on negative things are much more, have a more magnetic draw power than ooey gooey things like generosity and love and joy and awe. And because we can be hooked up to machines that actually register and show us what's going on in our brain and then how that affects our body, they can actually, just like they can wire somebody up to see what anger does to their mind, their emotions, their body, we can see what awe does. And the result of that has been quite astounding. And I believe that it's part of this creative God, the way He wired us. He wired us for awe, just like He wired us for music and wired us for the sun. He wired us for awe. And so, looking at that, the effect that it has on our mind, emotions, and body, we can draw from that and see the impact that it has on our sleep. And so now, after this study kind of lying dormant for several years, now we're beginning to see more and more articles and more studies done on the effect of awe in the human mind, body, and emotions. And so, what is awe? I mean, we don't hear that word used very much. And so basically, it's that moment when you are overwhelmed by both the scale of something, how big it is, or the beauty of it, that it impacts you. And it can be as you're looking at a vista, beautiful mountain range, a sunset. It can be something as you're looking, if you're inside a cathedral. I love cathedrals in France and England. As you're inside and you are just overwhelmed by the architecture, or a beautiful work of art. I love the Musée d'Orsay in Paris and the art. And I mean, it was almost a spiritual experience. The floor that has all the impressionist artists, and you look at this painting and something happens. You're just awed. You're just stunned by the beauty of it. And it can also be something that you listen to, depending on the kind of music you like. But it could be if you're listening to a live or even, just audio of a symphony, and the wonder of that and its impact. You can feel something shift. And so the awe effect is being translated into our sleep.
Very interesting, because of course awe and reverent fear go hand in hand as a definition. The fear of the Lord is a reverent awe. A fear, it's not being afraid of, it's holding in the highest regard, encompassing all of the attributes and the benefits of that encounter. We're talking with Faith Blatchford, as we do on the last Monday of every month, for the Sleep Project, Better Nights for Better Days. You can find more about her at thesleepproject.org. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to dig into how awe benefits you, how it affects your sleep, ways to foster more awe in your life, and bring into sleep a new attitude, a new sense of shalom, a new setting that is not filled with the turmoil of the world, but a way to shut the world out, to open the gates of heaven. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to join me and my special featured guests twice per month with Rabbi Zev Parat and Carl Gallups, and monthly with Dr. Michael Heiser, Dr. Michael Lake, Dr. Timothy Jennings, Dr. Mark Baker, Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, Drs. Michelle and Mark Sherwood, Dr. Kim Moss, Derek Gilbert, Peter Rosenberger, Brandon Gallups, Steve Fair, Stephen Black, and Sean Tabbitt for in-depth insights into Israel, prophecy, the unseen realm, The Brain, Spiritual Warfare, Overcoming Shame, Mysteries of the Bible, Prophetic Insights, The Sensational and the Supernatural, Caregiving, Addiction Recovery, Understanding the Divided Heart, Same-Sex Attraction, and much more. We're proud to feature some of the greatest biblical minds from both Israel and around the United States. Check out our featured guest lineup and 24/7 feed on ignitinganation.com or watch by topic on any device with our free apps. If you can't find what you need, you're just not looking in the right place. Follow us on social media and download our free apps today.
With today's smartphone technology, news, information, sports, and entertainment is widely available and almost unbounded. But what about the information that believers in Yeshua are looking for? Well, now there's an app for that. Igniting a Nation now has apps available for Android and iPhone. With our app, you'll gain access to everything you would in our website, from our featured guests to our live streaming shows. Visit Google Play or the Apple Store and download Igniting a Nation's new app today.
Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, inviting you to join me and Israel's #1 rated guide, Edo Canaan, for our annual Israel trip. Our 2022 trip is now open for registration for our 18th trip to Israel. Our trip will take us from Tel Aviv to the Galilee, down to the Dead Sea, and 4 nights in Jerusalem. You will walk where Yeshua walked and watch the Bible turn from black and white to living color. Visit ignitinganation.com/events and download the registration form today. No, it's not too early to take advantage of our payment plan designed to fit any budget. All of our trips sell out, and we want you to experience this life-changing journey. Registration is now open for April 2nd to 13th, 2022, and we promise you, you will never read your Bible the same way again. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and as we do on the last Monday of every month at 12 o'clock hour Central Time, we have Faith Blatchford join us for the Sleep Project, Better Nights for Better Days. She's the author of Winning the Battle for the Night, God's Plan for Sleep, Dreams, and Revelation. Faith, welcome back.
Thank you. You know, we've been looking at the assault against sleep that everyone is going through due to COVID, and I have a new book coming out in March it's a devotional. It's called God of Wonders, 40 Days of Awe in the Presence of God. And because of that, I mean, having written it and because of just exploring this whole realm of awe and wonder, I always look for the research aspects of it and was astounded to find out the medical and emotional, mental aspects and benefits of awe. And as a result of that, then I look up awe and sleep, and you think, how do those two things even remotely coincide? But they do, and the effects of awe, because of the studies that have been done, one of them is that awe, when a person experiences awe, it relieves the stress and anxiety. How do they know that? How can they figure that out? Well, they put electrodes on the brain and the heart and other areas of the body, and so when they have people looking at visual images of beautiful scenery and whatever images they can put before the person, they realize that it affects the nervous system, 2 areas of the mind, the brain. And one of the areas is the area of fight or flight, which produces stress and anxiety. And so when an awesome picture is being viewed by the patient, that area of the brain just completely goes quiet. The fight or flight just reduces. You can just see it in the visual images of the brain. Well, that is really important because fight or flight, when that's going on in our mind, it affects our body, it affects the cortisol that stirs us up. And when there's too much cortisol being released in the body, that puts a dampening effect on the serotonin and melatonin that's trying to be produced in our body. And we all know melatonin is what people take to help them sleep. So awe reduces cortisol, which means melatonin is going to have more, be produced and released more in the body, and better sleep. So that's number one. Number two, the result of awe being experienced in the human body has had it, they can see through science, through study, through research, that it helps reduce the proteins that impact inflammation. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, so this is, kindergarten level explanation of this, but basically awe reduces inflammation in the body. Well, what does inflammation out of control do in the body? It leads to, among other things, it affects our mind, depression, it affects our body and pain. And how many people suffer from sleep disruption because of chronic pain? That joint in your knee or your hip or your elbow or your neck, or the impact of inflammation on disease itself. So awe being experienced reduces inflammation, which is going to increase sleep, the quality of it, and probably the quantity of it. But it all starts with awe. Getting into the aspect of awe which is going to affect our mind, awe, when it's experienced by someone, the studies have shown that it reduces materialism, that over focus on things, getting things, having money to get things, worried about not having enough money because I can't get the things that I want, even some of the things I need. So awe expands our perspective on life and the important things, and the massive scale of what we're seeing puts in better perspective that car that we want or that new electronic device. And so it reduces materialism. Well, one of the things that keeps a lot of people awake at night is this drive for amassing more money to be able to buy this, even things we want to buy for our children. Christmas is coming and we're trying to think, how can I afford that thing for my child? Well, if we can get above materialism, it takes the pressure off. So another aspect of what awe can do is it puts us in better perspective. And so rather than micromanaging myself and what I'm doing and getting depressed because my options are limited now because of COVID, the sense of awe, it expands the truth of the world I live in, and it puts me in a different perspective, which helps me understand and not be depressed. I see the bigger picture. And it also, this is phenomenal to me that modern research can so identify these changes in a person because of awe, experiencing awe. The last one is so important because one of the problems in COVID right now is this sense of isolation, disconnection. We're not meeting in church, we're not meeting and all the social activities that we're used to that give us this sense of I belong and I'm connected to people. Well, somehow awe, when it's experienced, it connects us. It gives me a sense of connection. And whether it's that I realize that you're experiencing this same sunset, that we as the family of God, the human race, awe and the awareness of the bigness of creation, of God, connects me with you, because I'm not just in my own little apartment or my own little house. I'm part of something bigger which causes connection. It's amazing. I mean, I think it just shows the hand of God in our life.
What's interesting is you mentioned art galleries, and this is the time to, because of the internet, we have the ability to go look at the masters. We have the ability to go look at some things. You may never go to the Louvre. You may never see the Mona Lisa or Michelangelo in person. But the appreciation for the art can be gathered if you go from entertainment to infotainment, adding a little bit of richness to your vocabulary, expand your horizons. When I was little, we had a grand piano in my home, and it was a gift from my grandmother to my sister, and it was for the purpose of her learning to play it. But it always left me with a longing to want to be able to play the piano, but that opportunity wasn't afforded to me. But I like watching videos of these young children, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, who have these incredible gifts as child prodigies, master the masters. So I don't even know whether or not it's Mozart. I don't know if it's Beethoven. I don't know if it's Chopin. I don't know if it's Tchaikovsky. I don't know. I just know I'm so fascinated by the beauty and the richness and the gift that 10 minutes of watching that gives me a sense of awe. 10 minutes of watching a painter. We have a local painter here in Birmingham that very well known for the work that he does, and what he does is he films his projects and then he speeds them up. Mm-hmm. And he does them from the beginning to end of a painting, but he does it in like a 7-minute video. Very fast. You can see the whole thing take shape. And it's fascinating. Okay. Now, I don't have any artistic abilities. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. But spending that time gives me a sense of awe of the gifts that he's given to other people. Yeah. And to take that time, instead of immersing yourself in the vampire series or the this 27 seasons of whatever, because you calculated out that there's 12 episodes per season, 27 episodes, you could fill up 300 hours of watching this program and become connected with the characters. Well, that's a form of connection. That's a form of AI connection of community. But what about looking at some of the great wonders of the world? What about doing a trip to Petra, but through National Geographic? What about doing a trip to the pyramids through National Geographic? I don't know what somebody may write in and say, how could you say National Geographic, they're in favor of this or they're in favor of that? I'm not endorsing National Geographic. I'm saying that there are plenty of artistic methods or avenues to go look at and to read about. I read 3 books a day in preparation for this show. So reading for pleasure for me is a very difficult thing. I do it as a career. It's a part of my job. So people send me things to read, but there will be certain topics that catch my interest. I'll go watch a TED presentation on that topic, and fascinated by that, which tells me the wonders, learning that bacteria communicates with each other, and that new technology in medicine says instead of working on an antibiotic, we're going to work on a pill that sends a signal to the bacteria that tells it everything's okay. There's nothing to see here, so the bacteria doesn't mobilize to the point of injury. That's fascinating to me.
Yes.
God's creation has created this microbe that can talk. We need to reset our minds to the things above, to the Word of God, and to find that there is an awe, a reverence for Niagara Falls, for the Grand Canyon, for Yosemite, for the Sequoia National Forest. But I can't go there right now. I promise you there's a travel log. There's a guide that wants to take you on a virtual tour, and you can feel that same feeling. Jane Goodall took us into the world of the chimpanzee, and we didn't have to go in order to experience watching those relationships developed, in order to have a sense of awe of God. And by doing that and setting our minds on this awe, you truly embrace creation in a way that brings you a great deal of peace, calmness, and appreciation for the wonders of God. So I think you've touched on something very wonderful. We've been talking with Faith Blatchford, as we do on the last Monday of every at the end last Monday of every month, at the 12 o'clock hour for the Sleep Project, Better Nights for Better Days. And you can find out about her at faithblatchford.com or thesleepproject.org. Another impactful episode in talking about the realm of sleep and how we can really reframe our thinking and not be so overwhelmed by that which can be overwhelming. Faith Blatchford, thank you for joining us here. God bless you. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.